and welcome to the Shop of Joy, the podcast that celebrates the heart and the soul of retail. Whether you're serving on the shop floor, you're leading a team, or simply someone who loves a brilliant customer moment, this space is for you. Each episode will explore how to turn your store into a joyful place for your customers, your colleagues, and just as importantly, for yourself. So this episode, we are looking all about what retail can learn from great restaurants, right? What can a retail store learn from hospitality? It's a great day. The sun's shining. It's a Friday. The weekend is in front of us. I've got my cappuccino. I'm ready to rock and roll. Okay, so why restaurants? Why do we look at restaurants and go, you know what, this is the pinnacle of customer experience and we can learn a lot from them? I see it on holiday a lot, right? I go to a restaurant on holiday and a lot of the time, say I'm in Greece or I'm in Spain or somewhere I've gone for a sun and sea holiday. And in the evening, I'll go to a restaurant. If I've been on the holiday for a couple of days already, they'll remember my name. They will put bread in front of me when I sit down. They might offer me a drink on the house. The experience makes me feel amazing. So how do we get that, right? How do we get that experience of hosting and hospitality and take all of that and weave it into the very fibres, the very fabric of our retail space? See, I come away from some of these amazing restaurants actually not remembering what I ate. If you ask me what I ate on in a great restaurant 6 weeks ago, I'm not going to remember what I ate, but I remember how that restaurant made me feel. And that is the key. And the best restaurants, they're word of mouth restaurants. So the food is great. Yeah, don't get me wrong. But most of the time, the word of mouth has elevated the experience because your friend said you need to go and see this restaurant. It's amazing. It feels amazing when you're in there. So the food is actually made much better by the experience that you get when you actually step into the restaurant and all of these little magic touches, all of this stardust that's sprinkled throughout the experience. And a restaurant is built solely for experience, right? From welcome when you first walk into the restaurant to the goodbye when you leave the restaurant. You could so easily just get a takeaway and eat at home, but you actually choose to eat out specifically for the experience. They are experience palaces, restaurants, or they should be at least. Now, we all know a few restaurants that aren't experience palaces, and we don't need to talk about those. But the best restaurants, they are palaces for experience because that is the reason why they've been built. They combine human touch, they combine emotional moments, and they combine storytelling in a single visit. So competition and reviews, right? They serve to push restaurant standards higher. When you think about restaurants, they're one of the most saturated industries that there is. There's so many restaurants out there. I can go down to my local high street and just walk down there and there's 10 restaurants and 10 shops just layered in together, right? So there's so much competition. Yes, I know there's different types of food, of course, but the competition to when somebody's looking for their dinner, the competition is absolutely fierce. So what happens is these restaurants, they've got to innovate, or they've got to die. And many new restaurants struggle because they're serving the same food and they just focus on the food, but they don't focus on the experience. And so the best restaurants and the restaurants that always survive and succeed are the restaurants that innovate and they focus on the customer reviews. One bad review can just absolutely sink a restaurant. So they need to make sure they are on top of their game 24/7. And there's a great quote from Ruby Laonegra, I believe her name is. And she said, it takes 12 positive experiences to make up for one negative experience. So when you think about that in terms of a restaurant, if they serve a customer badly one time, that customer is going to have to come back 12 times to even be on base level happiness with that restaurant. But most of the time, that customer is never going to come back. So regulars and return visits for a restaurant, they're the ultimate goal. So just like in retail, They want regular customers, and they want return visits, and they also want word of mouth. Word of mouth is so powerful. I've said this before, but people, more than anything, people trust people that they know and like. So if your friend's been to a restaurant and loves it, that's going to be trusted way more. So restaurants are relying on spreading the magic for the word of mouth. So what can we actually learn from a great restaurant experience? So there's about 5 things that you can identify, and you can actually take them and drop them into retail and create that restaurant magic, create that experiential magic when you walk into your retail space. Number 1 is the welcome. So think about when you go into a great restaurant, right? It's busy, there's the sound of clattering plates everywhere, but even if all of the waiters and waitresses are busy, you always get a smile, you always get an acknowledgement, you always at least get eye contact, whatever happens. And sometimes you get a little thumbs up, right? The welcome acknowledgement is so key, even before full service. All the waiters and waitresses in the best restaurants know that you need to acknowledge anybody that walks into that space, because the restaurant is your home for the evening. It's your home from home for the evening. And if you walk into somebody's home, you want to be acknowledged straight away. Okay? So the biggest thing to learn from that is you don't have to serve a customer right away. I know how many challenges there is on a shop floor in terms of actually getting enough team on the shop floor on a really busy day. But making sure that every single customer that walks in is acknowledged within 7 seconds by a wave or a nod. If you're on the phone, you can just put your hand up or just nod to the customer. If you're serving another customer in the store, you can ask the customer, bear with me 1 second, and then you just say welcome in. That's what happens day in, day out in a restaurant. And it's been happening in the best restaurants for years and years and years. It works. Acknowledgement is key as soon as somebody walks into the space, and we can take that and drop that straight into retail. The next thing is personalization and memory. There's a great cafe near me that I go into regularly. And as soon as I walk in, they say to me, "Welcome back, Sam. It's great to see you. How you've been doing? How's your daughter? You having your usual today?" Instantly, I feel loyalty to that space, to that cafe, because I feel like I've been remembered. I'm not just another number. I'm not just another customer to them. I mean something to the people that work in that cafe, right? They're using my name. I'm not just being served. I'm being hosted. So remembering customers' names is really important, but going further than that as well. So if you can remember their past purchases and ask a question about that when they come in, absolutely do that. Remember that they like a particular style as well. Now, there's some fantastic CRM capture systems that you can capture all of these details, or have a little black book where you can capture the details of your customers as well. Obviously, be very aware of the data protection rights and data protection rules here, of course. But find a space where you can make notes so you remember absolutely everything about that customer when they walk in order to surprise and delight them, because the best restaurants are doing that. The best restaurants feel like you're walking into the house of a friend. Then the third thing that restaurants do really well is they anticipate needs, right? The best waiters, they scan the room constantly, just check in for customers' needs before they're being asked, right? If you're sat there and you've got a bottle of wine on the table and your wine glass is nearly empty, what happens? A waiter comes over and just fills up your wine glass. They've anticipated your needs, right? If they see a fork is on the floor, or you don't have a fork or a knife, the waiter brings that straight over. Sometimes in the best restaurants as well, you'll get bread on the table. You'll get some extra bits and pieces aligning to the table, depending on how. If it's a hot day, you get water put on the table. Your needs are always anticipated at every touch point, and this shouldn't just be for the restaurant industry. this should be for the retail industry. So, for instance, read the room. So, what's a customer's body language saying? If they walk in and it is a hot day, like I mentioned before, we can read the room and we can give them a glass of water as soon as they walk in. If it's raining, we need to take off their coat and find somewhere dry to put their coat. If they've got a big bag, when you walk into a restaurant and you've got a big suitcase, there's a cloakroom in the restaurant. They take the suitcase, no problem, I'll put that in the cloakroom. The exact same thing we can do in retail. So we match the customer. So if the customer's in a rush as well. I used to work in a shop right near a train station. Customers are always in a rush. So if they're in a rush, then that's fine. We can pace the service. It's their need to actually be a little bit quicker, right? So anticipating the customer's needs, reading what the customer needs in that moment is key for the restaurant industry, but just as key in retail, right? Scan the room, see what the customers need, read it, and give it to them. The fourth thing that you see in great restaurants is a real passionate waiter or waitress explaining the menu to you. I absolutely love it when I sit down and a waiter comes, welcomes me in, I'm sat at the table, and I pick up the menu and he walks me through some of the best items on the menu. It doesn't have to be everything, but walks me through some of the thinking behind how the chef has put these items together, right? Where these wines have come from in the world, what these wines pair with beautifully, what the history of the restaurant is a lot of the time. It's not just, okay, what do you want to order? They talk you through, they take you on a journey. The most enthusiastic waiters, they're the ones that make the place come alive because they feel so passionate about it. And they're vibrating at a very, very high frequency. And when you vibrate at a high frequency, you naturally match that frequency and you go away feeling amazing. So you can do exactly the same thing in retail. When a customer comes in, you've asked a couple of open questions, and then you storytell about the pieces that you've identified that they might like based on those open questions. You're a guide as well. You can talk about the history of the store. You can talk about the inspiration behind the product. There's so many things that you can talk about after you ask those open questions in order to surprise and delight your customer. So put your mindset into the mind of a great waiter, explaining the menu, taking you through the menu, making the customer salivate with all of the things, all of the beautiful descriptions of the food. Do that, but with the products and with the store in retail. Be a guide and tell. Don't show. You got to tell. You got to show and tell. Okay, so don't just show. You got to tell and you've got to show. Absolutely key. Then finally is the final kiss to the customer. So in a restaurant, I absolutely love it, right? And I think the key thing is to note here, customers always remember the start and the end of an experience. So the two things that they remember the most, right? So walking in the welcome, what's the greeting like? And then how they were made to feel at the end. And the best restaurants know this, because at the end, sometimes you'll get a handwritten note with the dessert. You'll get a complimentary drink at the end of the meal. You might get even some mints with the bill, right? The best restaurants, you'll get something personalized sent to your table. Now, it's a small thing a lot of the time, and a lot of the time this doesn't cost the restaurant hardly anything. But the customers know the restaurateurs know that the thoughtful close is the thing that their restaurant will be remembered for the most. And in an industry where, as I mentioned before, there's a lot of restaurants around and a lot of the time on the same street, how do you stand out? You make a memory, you close strong. And it's exactly the same thing in retail. Include a thoughtful close. It's been lovely to have you. Hope to see you again. Here's a small gift from us to you, right? Or give the customer a reason to return. Invite them to a VIP event. invite them to the next store opening, invite them to a product launch. Give the customer something at the end of the experience that makes them go, wow, I wasn't expecting that. Pattern interrupt. They think they're just going to walk out and say thank you very much. Layer something onto the end of the experience, because that is truly what the customers will remember. So those are the 5 things. If you take those 5 things from the restaurant industry, from the hospitality industry, and you drop those into retail, that's absolutely overnight going to elevate your retail customer experience. So you improve the welcome, number 1. You remember the customer and you personalize the customer around that, right? Then number 3 is you anticipate the customer's needs, see what the customer needs and make sure you're giving it to them before the customer asks. Number 4 was we explain the product, very much like the restaurant that explains the menu. You walk them through the product, you storytell around the product, you wrap the product in this experience, right? And remember I said, you don't just show, you tell and you show at the same time. And that's what the best restaurants do. And then finally, you give that final kiss to the customer. You interrupt their pattern of what they think they're just going to be walking out and saying thank you very much. You do something extra for them. You layer on an extra layer to the experience to make sure they remember the restaurant, they remember the retail store, they remember you ultimately. So I hope you enjoyed that episode of The Shop of Joy. Have a think about the last time you felt amazing in a restaurant and what made that restaurant experience memorable for you. And how could you take that experience and how could you add elements to it in your store? You're not always going to be able to do all of it, of course, but small elements and improving on them every single day is key. And remember, consistency. All about consistency. There's no point in taking one of these things, doing them for one customer, and then the next customer, they get a bad experience because you're not fully focused. It's all about doing these small things, consistency for every single customer. And then when it becomes a habit, then you add the next layer to the experience. And then once the next layer becomes a habit, then you add the next layer. So customer experience, an incredible customer experience, you can't just turn it on absolutely overnight with a full team and with a large retail space. What you've got to do is include one thing and then make sure, take 2 to 3 weeks to make sure that is trained in and all the team are doing it. Once all the team are doing it, you pick another thing and you layer it on. And then give it 6 months, you're going to have all of these elements of the customer experience just layered on and on and on and on and on. You're going to have an unforgettable space for your customers to come in.